All right. It's been a long time since I've gone live, and I'm actually hoping I can get some people to join me here. I've got to check back into that possibility. I forgot. Add viewers to be in your broadcast. So I can add people into the broadcast. That's cool. So if someone out there really wants to converse with me and explore the topic we're about to get into, let me know in a comment and I can add you. So that would be cool. All right. I think I'm going to chill out for a minute and gather my thoughts. This is going to be a spontaneous sharing about my emerging vision and intention to help catalyze and co-produce a different kind of mental health summit. So I'm just going to tune in for a second. So I have this new vision emerging. It's new because it's a fresh take on something that I've already been thinking about, talking about, working on, manifesting to different degrees in different ways for many years, really. But I've been really inspired the last few days by a few different posts, a few different comments from friends and other synchronicities. So I'm here to talk again spontaneously and extemporaneously about my vision, intentions, and desires for what I'm calling the Alternative Reality Summit / Mental Health Reformation. I want to help catalyze and co-produce a type of summit that really we haven't seen before, as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to raising awareness and social activism, especially in the realms of mental health. And specifically, I'm really interested in reimagining how we understand perceived mental illness and addiction, and not only having a new and fresh and better, deeper, more consistent, accurate, and enlightened understanding of perceived mental illness and addiction. That's just the starting point, right? Having a newer, better, fresher understanding, a new conception, a new framework, a new ground upon which we act and behave. So that's number one, creating that deeper understanding together with the community, using our collective intelligence, our collective wisdom, and our collective experiences. So the summit will be familiar to some degrees and to other summits in that there will be a version of awareness raising and education and sharings and presentations and talks and conversations. Where we're going to step into a new zone is the second or complementary side of this summit, which is really action-oriented, innovation-oriented, co-creation, collaboration-oriented. This summit will not be held just to raise awareness or help destigmatize beliefs around perceived mental illness and addiction. This summit will not be a handshaking exercise or for people to just talk incessantly at the audience. This summit is actually, for me, a launch pad for a social movement, for what I call mental health reformation. The author Neil Donald Walsh once used the line, "a civil rights movement for the soul," in one of his books, and I resonate with that for what I'm talking about here. So this, for me, is a launch of a movement of innovation for deep systemic change of the institutions that make up this ecosystem of mental health around the world. I was thinking yesterday, if this were the 50s or 60s and Martin Luther King were around and the Black Panthers and all that, and they had the internet tools, I don't think they would just be putting on summits with fancy graphics, with offers at the end of the summit. I think they would be using these tools to create change, to demonstrate, to demand differences. Now, in 2022, I think we're faced with a little bit of a different scenario where we've realized going to the White House or going to the politicians or the business people or the churches or synagogues and et cetera, is really not getting it done. That's why we have this rise of obviously decentralization and cryptocurrencies and socioeconomic change and climate activism. You know, I think a lot of us have realized that we need to be the ones we've been waiting for, as the saying goes, that we need to take responsibility for changing the things and impacting the things that mean the most to us. We can't wait around for mommy and daddy government or mommy and daddy investor or mommy and daddy religion to do what might be considered the right thing or the courageous thing or the radical, innovative thing. There's just too much dogma, stagnancy, and groupthink in the systems and institutions of this planet to count on any kind of support in that way. So I'm here to pick up that responsibility, and I know there's a lot of people like me out there and a lot of my friends and allies, and that's what this summit is going to be about. It's also going to be a little bit different, this summit, because I'm going to bring two projects, two innovations to the table, and I'll be asking the participants of the summit and the audience of the summit to get involved and find a way to be part of this mental health reformation movement and to help manifest these innovations. You know, most summits, I guess, don't have a kind of personal agenda, but this one does. Again, this is not an education or just awareness-raising activity. This is because the world needs what people like me have to offer when it comes to the topic of perceived mental illness and addiction. So I'm very excited to start thinking about what would a summit look like that included this co-creative collective intelligence piece. What would a summit look like that actually was looked back on as a moment in time when a movement truly was born? What would that be like? So I'm calling it the Alternative Reality Summit because I'm really trying to create an alternative reality here for the way we, again, understand perceived mental illness and addiction, and then our responsibility to that understanding. And I'm trying to understand and starting to think about how I can pull this off. I'm starting to think about who I can invite to support in different ways, and how do I produce an online event like that and find a space. How do I inspire a small team to help me create the organizational structure and framework and the spreadsheet so I can organize this, and also so I can stay in my fast lane and play the roles that I think I'm meant to play. But until I can figure that out, I'm going to wear every hat and do my best to manifest enough material and descriptions and understanding so people want to support. This current iteration really started a few days ago. So I've been working on some slides for about a year. I come back to them, I leave them, I come back to them, about a transmedia social documentary TV show that I want to make that would simultaneously be a little bit of a biography of my journey, but that's the least important thing. That's just a platform and a vehicle. Really, this transmedia social impact documentary would be a vehicle itself for this mental health reformation. I've got some really amazing ideas. I've got a network around the world of people I know, medical doctors, shamans, psychedelic practitioners, other people with these diagnoses, healers of all kinds, entrepreneurs. So I've got a wonderful, wonderful network. I think a lot of people will want to and be happy to show up and bring their gifts and be part of this summit. So it's mostly about me creating the best container and exciting invitation to start with. So I've been working on this idea for a TV show, and I had been a little bit down about it, and I talked to a couple of friends last week, and they got me reinvigorated. I'm so grateful. That's Kai and a new friend, Jeff, who she introduced me to, and really the conversation was just glorious, being around people, you know, that understand you and have similar experiences. That's always wonderful. But it also had me realize that my slides, although they're too complicated right now, as far as being a normal pitch deck, you know, they're too complicated, they need to be refined. But at the same time, I realized, wow, I'm actually closer than I think. I've got about 10 people I could easily spend a weekend with, each one of them filming together, and the footage from that could easily make an extended trailer, which I believe would inspire and interest a lot of people. So I had been reinvigorated thinking about this TV show idea. Bring them on camera. Well, I feel like I want to stay in flow instead of messaging. I should have had my laptop open, Melissa. Hey, but if you want, you can look on my friends list. One is Kai, K-A-I, Henderson, and Jeff. Jeff is a new friend. I don't know if I know his last name. I think it's G-E-I-S. But if people want to tag them, yeah, I'm happy to bring Kai and Jeff on right now, and schedule it another time. But yeah, if you guys happen to see this, you're more than welcome to come on. That would be great. I did want to really have a group conversation rather than talk at the camera so much, but I felt like expressing myself today. I'm feeling optimistic and hopeful, and I was asked, you know, well, what do I envision this summit being like by somebody? So wanted to create a little bit of a video, so I had some footage of me ideating with all of you and sharing more about the inspiration and the essence than the fine details at the moment. So like I was saying, I was reinvigorated about this TV idea. So then I went to my friend Jenny, who is an awesome friend, who also has a life journey similar to mine. And she has a nonprofit in the U.S., so I went to her and said, can we sign an agreement for you to be my fiscal sponsor so I can receive tax-deductible donations? So I put a post out just saying, hey, great, I took a small step. I've got a fiscal sponsor. I can get donations now. And a friend of mine named Gino tagged some of his friends, and they tagged some of their friends. Gino is an amazing networker. He always shows up to help me and others by just tagging and making connections. So that led to a flood of a bunch of new friends that are working in the field of mental health reformation, really, and shining in their own ways. One of them even donated $100, and I wasn't really seeking donations with that post. I was just saying, hey, I took a small step, celebrating that kind of little move. So someone donated $100, actually. So now I've reached out to a couple of friends saying, can I make a humble gesture of sending you $25 to spend an hour with me to teach me some things I'm going to need to know about putting on the summit, maybe creating a DAO as well. That's another piece of the summit and activity, and having a container and having governance and actually getting on with innovating. So that was that. I was talking about the TV show, then I got the fiscal sponsor, then I got a $100 donation from a beautiful woman, and she's been tagging people and sharing my posts. My donors to me are my co-producing patrons. So this beautiful woman, Jen, has been sharing my posts around and tagging people. So I just feel excited to be doing what I love to do, you know? So we've got those two things. And then I'm already working on a project called Call to the Mothers with two good friends of mine out in Canada in the Toronto area, Hillary and Romelia. And we've got a project called Call to the Mothers, which is about reimagining mental illness and addiction. And we have a process called Taste of Wonderland that Hillary and a friend of hers invented, which is a framework for collective intelligence. It's based on Alice in Wonderland. It has these 4 stages where you go through a process to observe the cracks in the system, to observing even the pains and grieving that we're holding on to that we need to process and let go of, and then all the new possibilities for new solutions. And then the 4th step is taking one item from each of those steps at the Mad Hatter's Tea Party and saying, well, what would it be like to have a solution that addressed these 3 prior points, the grieving, the crack in the system, and one of the possible new solutions. So when you mash that up, so it's a tool for personal transformation in a sense, because people go through the grieving and observing and sharing what they see as cracks. It's also a creative process and an innovation process. So it also creates the collective intelligence. It's basically a database of what real people are feeling and experiencing when it comes to mental illness and addiction, and how they're receiving or not receiving the support that they would like to support. Are they thriving or not? So the Taste of Wonderland is a great process for many reasons, and it's fun. And Call to the Mothers is that project that I have going on. So I was talking to Hillary from Call to the Mothers and thinking we really want to start shouting out a little bit more and being a little bit more assertive, and kind of we're mad as heck and we can't take it anymore kind of feeling, because a lot of the summits and platforms and presentations about mental health happening right now for me are clearly created with the best of intentions, but for me they perpetuate a lot of the problems that exist. I believe they miss the point in many ways, and raising awareness and destigmatizing mental illness and addiction is a beautiful part of the process, but it's clearly for me the tip of the iceberg. So I'm not happy in that sense. I'm dissatisfied with what I see out in the world when it comes to reimagining our understanding of perceived mental illness and addiction. And really, we've got to do, I think when we feel like we see something missing, or we feel like there's a problem, quote unquote, I think that's really, us telling ourselves, well, then we're the ones to bring the solution, or we're the ones that have the insight or the perspective that's missing. So just like Bucky Fuller said, you don't fight the system or try to go against the grain. So instead of blaming others or complaining, what's missing or what's not happening in the world of mental health reformation, it's really on me, to some degrees, positively mean that, not as a burden, but it's on me to find a way to be the change I want to see in the world, as they say. So the Taste of Wonderland is a kind of collective intelligence process and a co-creation process. I already work on different systems and softwares and ideas with living systems and co-creation. So I've been around a lot of innovation and processes and the power of those things and the power of technology, obviously. So when I add up all those things together, the co-creation, the interactiveness, what I call story living, by the way, this summit, this alternative reality summit for mental health reformation is about story living, not storytelling. So storytelling is getting a little boring for me. It's a little bit, I've realized storytelling, I'll tell you what we should do, I'll tell you how it is, I'll tell you what to believe, I'll tell you what this is. And I almost feel the imposition to some degree. I mean, I'm playing with words here, don't get me wrong. Storytelling is still storytelling, sitting around a campfire. There's nothing wrong or missing about storytelling. But energetically and metaphorically speaking and poetically speaking, I started to feel, storytelling feels a little bit antiquated to some degree. I mean, I like to innovate. I like to think of new things, and I didn't come up with the word story living. It's not used much, but I've seen it in a couple different places. But I started thinking this idea of being the change you want to see in the world is more about story living. So what is the story I want to live? That's the question about the summit. What is the story that I want to live? And how do I go about expressing it and inspiring contribution, collaboration, and co-creation and support for living that story? And the story that I'm living is about a complete systemic change. I use the word reformation and mental health reformation because one time I was curious. I looked up the famous Reformation, the Lutheran Reformation. I guess that's the 1800s maybe. Forgive my history if it's the wrong time period. And there was something in the definition of the Reformation, it's really about changing things at an institutional policy level and all that, and challenging the status quo, really challenging the authorities to some degree. It's a reformation, a reformation of our understandings, and then again, how we act from those understandings. So that's the reason, personally, the movement for me that I'm trying to catalyze here is a mental health reformation. It's about challenging the status quo, challenging the authorities, challenging the philosophies, the metaphysics, the politics, all of it, challenging all of it, and doing it in this new way of, decentralization, distribution, cryptocurrencies, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So this is a big, ambitious thing to some degree, and of course we get it's impossible, start where you are. etc., etc. But that's not my cup of tea. So I do want to be meticulous about it. I wanted to say practical, but I don't like the word practical. I want to just get on with it. I want to ground it somehow. So I've decided I'm going to help coordinate, catalyze, help co-produce this live interactive summit thing. And what's my vision for it? I mean, I got to watch out for the famous scope creep, but here it is ideally, in a big picture sense. There's a physical place where this summit is happening and people attend. It's also online. I've already got amazing people around the world. I've got a couple Western trained medical doctors, one in Egypt, one in Germany. I've got someone who's a transformational leader and actor. I've got friends who also have been diagnosed with these perceived mental illnesses and addictions. So I've actually got a group of people, and I've got some new friends showing up, like I was talking about earlier. So having people be part of the summit is not going to be a problem for me. My biggest challenge is going to be that I'm usually a visionary and a futurist and a talker and a speaker, and it's going to be a good test for me to see if I can coordinate and get something off the ground and inspire some kind of small team of support and help to fill the gaps and help me with the things I'm not so great at. But so what I'm seeing is the television show I've been thinking about, and seeing this summit as also one scene, one aspect of the television show during the first season. Like I said, the television show is a living documentary. It has these social processes. It's about me going around the world basically pretending, playing, like when we were kids. You know, the root of the word illusion is to play, actually. So when we say use your illusion, or as a matter of fact, use your delusion, it really means to play. So I realized I need to play my way to the change I want to see in the world. I need to play my way to manifestation. And if I can't have everything the way I want and control things, and I can't maybe magically have the musician I want to help me walk through the door, and I can't magically just have someone donate $1 million, then maybe I can simulate the experience, you know? Maybe I can act as if. Maybe I can use and have fun with some of the ideas that the brain doesn't know the difference between imagination and reality. Maybe I can create and almost backcast the scenario, the world that I want to live in 5 years from now, where mental health and mental illness and addiction are understood completely differently. So this summit is a part of a TV show. I'm going to have people show up and present in a little bit of the old-fashioned way, like give them time to present whatever their gifts are, their offerings, their takes on addiction and mental illness. I'm going to be inviting pioneers, you know, edge walkers, grassroots friends and people. There may be some people that are more well-known, I don't know, but I'm more interested in mostly highlighting, inviting, and celebrating the people that don't often get a platform. And it's really important because these are mostly people with the lived experience and with these diagnoses and with these stories. So the summit is going to be a combination of sharing, and most of the people who are the participants on that side, the presenters, they're also going to be asked to commit to being part of the process of actually collaborating and co-creating together to help start manifesting these two innovations, which comes from the Call to the Mothers Project and my own vision for mental health reformation. So I'll talk about that in a minute. So the presenters are going to be part of a process. The summit will have an arc and a framework based on this Taste of Wonderland. So if it's a 4-hour summit or a 4-day summit or a 4-week summit, we're going to use these different stages of the Taste of Wonderland process as a framework for the whole summit. And then I have another friend whose innovation I sometimes use called the Magic Canoe, and that's another framework for multi-stakeholder collaboration. So I'm going to use this idea of the Magic Canoe, that we're all in this ship together, all in this canoe together, and we're going to transverse our way through Wonderland, and we're going to start in more of the unknowing, and we're going to move towards prototyping and action steps that we can take to manifest these two innovations. So it's going to be a live demonstration of cooperation, co-creation, collective intelligence, social activism, and movement building. For me, there's no question about it. If I can't do that, I'm not going to bother doing it. So that's where I'm at right now. I've got a lot of pieces in my head. I've got my pitch deck for my TV show, which needs to be refined. That's a big challenge for me. I'm going to continue working on it to the best of my ability. I'm also seeking some of my friends and people in my network to give me a hand. So if you happen to be a wizard with helping people, like a ghostwriter would, if you happen to be a wizard, we're taking complicated, complex, sophisticated ideas and massaging them into something that's much more impactful and refined, and without losing the uniqueness of the project, without losing the magic sauce that is better under the hood, but it still shows up in the invitation, in the deck. You can always look me up. But I'm feeling really happy. I think I probably feel most invigorated just by taking the reins and being proactive. And it's going to be an interesting experience to try to get this off the ground, but this is one of the missions, so to say, that I have in this lifetime, to ultimately create freely accessible community and tools and resources for anyone who's experiencing perceived mental illness or addiction. I recently came across a post about this experiment. Now, I can't verify or vet if this experiment is true, how true it is, if there was issues with it, but I'm going to share about it because I think no matter what the truth of the experiment was, there was truth in it for me. So there's a post going around in social media about this experiment, I think in the 70s, where they were working with rats. And, you know, if they gave rats, I think, 2 different bottles, one with heroin and one with water, they would basically keep taking the heroin and drinking from the heroin and kill themselves. And then someone came along and said, what if we build a rat park? You know, what if the rats have good food and friends and mazes and toys, and they have a community, basically. They have purpose. They've got connection. According to the experiment, even though the heroin bottle and the water bottle were both in the rat park, the rats stopped killing themselves. I think they still partook in the heroin bottle sometimes, to be honest. But the point of the story was, or what the conclusion was supposed to be, was that addiction is not so based on chemicals, which other studies are showing, by the way. It's based more on disconnection and feeling ostracized or purposeless or without meaning. So this experiment, this rat park, I thought to myself, you know, people don't understand me quite a lot because I talk with a lot of jargon, and I'm talking about sometimes new things, disruptive things that a lot of people either have trouble believing in because it's too impossible or too good to be true or too risky, or some people can't listen to it because it's a direct, in a sense, conflict with the work they're doing or their businesses, because it would change that for them. So I often have trouble, or not trouble, it's challenging. It's challenging being a futurist. It's a challenge, you know, bringing some things from potential to experienced here and now altogether as we know it. And when I read this article on the rat park, I thought, well, that's quite simple. People might understand that. I want to build a life park. I want to build life parks all around the planet where people come and they have connection, and they have the tools they need and the resources they need and the support they need to find their true selves, to find meaning in their own way, get well, be well, and from there start exploring what they want to bring to the world, what they want to create. And really, to be honest, rather than being then kicked out into the world as we know it or be told to go get a job 9 to 5, I want people to be able to stay in these life parks. I want them to be able to live there if they want. I want them to innovate there. I want them to create value for the world that comes back to the life parks, to them, and to their community. So, yeah. So one of the innovations that this summit is meant to help nourish and incubate is the first life park. There's some preference for having it in Canada for some reasons we'll share another time, but it doesn't really necessarily matter. And I don't want to do a little one building somewhere. This first prototype, this first life park, has to be a decently sized piece of property location where we can build some infrastructure. And it's going to be amazing. It'll be a cross between East and West. It'll have all sorts of technologies from indigenous to virtual reality. We'll have acupuncture. The people who are part of taking care of the people will be well taken care of. And it will be freely accessible, which I've always been inspired by the experiment that Patch Adams did when he came out of medical school and was in Virginia, I believe. And he had a big house and a bunch of doctors volunteered, and they were basically seeing people that didn't need insurance or anything. Eventually, it became too cumbersome, I think, and Patch had to try to go out and do something different and get bigger funding. But that was always an inspiration for me. I believe with the way the world is going, it's clear to me with cryptocurrencies and decentralized finance and all the other beautiful things happening that we can create a freely accessible life park because we can generate the resources to catalyze it and sustain it through the co-creative activities there, through other means and other streams. So the life park itself doesn't necessarily have to make a profit, and it therefore doesn't have to, be tied to health insurance. It doesn't have to be tied to pharmaceutical companies or the industry. It really can stand on its own 2 feet as this beautiful life park. So that's one of the innovations, and that's a long-term. This is where people might go when they're in crisis or right after they've been supported with an acute crisis. So the other innovation that Hillary and I have been talking about, and Hillary again is one of my partners in Call to the Mothers, is a mobile crisis response unit. So for those of you who are not familiar, quite often when people have what is called a psychotic episode or a manic episode or suicidal, whatever it may be, the police are called to the house or to a place of business or to a community. And the police are overwhelmed. They're not often trained to work with this. They're just trying to do their jobs. And really, they end up bringing people to the hospitals, and the hospitals are a nightmare. That's a whole nother topic. Maybe I'll stay on and talk more about that and why we're doing this. I guess it is important. But that's the other innovation, a new type of mobile crisis response unit. So when someone gets the call, and I do know people, I think, in the UK and Canada who actually are working on projects that instituted a new emergency number for psychiatric type events. Rather than 911, there's this other number you can call where you get to talk to a therapist. But really, sometimes people need to come out. So we're thinking about a mobile unit that is outfitted differently and outfitted with different kinds of people that would receive someone who is in such a crisis. And then, of course, we don't really want to help them in the moment of crisis and then take them to a hospital or a psychiatric ward or a prison or some ridiculous day program or other social program that is more traumatizing than what's already happening. We really want them to be able to go to some other place if they so need to be somewhere where they need to be held and encouraged and supported and healed in different ways. So those are the 2 innovations that the summit will be sponsoring to some degree. And we were trying to get some funding. It's interesting, in Canada through kind of quote unquote status quo normal ways. So we're not getting any traction. The system does not want to change, right? The system, the thing that is greater than the sum of its parts, really. It's not about any particular person or policy. I guess it's just cultural ways and means and paradigms emerge out of groupthink, and those things take on a life of their own. I think it's called an egregore or egregore in some mystical literature or some other literature. This kind of monster that gets created, the psychic, it's an energetic phenomena. And it's very clear. It's also clear from some of our research and development with Call to the Mothers and Taste of Wonderland that the system is creating, in many, many cases, more trauma than it is doing any good. And I know some people do well going to these psychiatric wards and hospitals and taking the usual status quo medications, so I'm not really here to argue about that. All I'll say is that, in my opinion, those stories get pushed to the spotlight. They get weaponized as propaganda, because the truth is, a significant portion, I don't know if it's 50%, 60%, 80%, but let's say it was 50% at minimum, which I believe would be hard to argue with. First of all, 10% would be too much, but let's say it was 50%, it doesn't work, the system, the medicines, everything, doesn't work for 50% of people. That's a big number. It's not working for enough of us, so we've got to come up with new solutions ourselves. We've got to innovate. We've got to create businesses. We've got to create movements. And we've got to figure out how to help each other and stop waiting on traditionally external environments and rescuers and systems. I'll give you another example. There's I hope everyone can look up, maybe I'll put a link in here later. There's a Dr. Anup Kumar. I think he's out of Virginia or Washington. He's a Western-trained emergency room doctor, and he also, by background, I believe, is from India, so he's got a sort of Hindu or Eastern religious sort of mystical background in terms of his culture. And he is one of the people who have really inspired me lately. He is talking about completely reimagining mental illness in relation to consciousness and medicine, and how we're really not understanding fundamentally how reality works, to be honest, and consciousness. So 95% of the medical industry, whether pharmaceutical, hospitals, scientists, etc., are treating our bodies like they're machines. They're treating us like matter is outside of consciousness. This is a deep philosophical thing, so I won't go too far now. If you were to look it up, it would sort of be materialism compared to idealism, and the movement that's happening in philosophy, metaphysics, and science around understanding the fundamental nature of experience really being consciousness, and then our bodies and minds appearing within consciousness, rather than this idea that consciousness emerges out of matter, out of this thing that's outside of consciousness, which is completely ludicrous if one were to think about it. So this Dr. Anup is someone I'm really hoping I can inspire to be on the summit. He would be a perfect example of someone who's really bringing a fresh, well, it's an old, ancient wisdom perspective and challenging the status quo. So he's a perfect a person I really hope can make it. I'm really hoping we can inspire Patch Adams to come along. Like I said, I've got tons of friends and connections who have beautiful skills and gifts and life stories who I would hope would be a part of this. I want to find a way to make it easy for everyone, you know? I want it to be organized and smooth and effortless. Of course, we know it's not always like that, but I just want to make it easy for people. I want them to be able to just say, yes, of course, Brett, I'll be there. I will share something valuable, and I will, to some degree, take part in launching this movement with you. So that's where I'm at, and I thought I'd just come on today because it's been a while. And I'm looking forward, if any of you want to look me up and do a live conversation together. I don't really feel like I thrive always by just staring and talking at a camera, but sometimes it's fun. Sometimes it's fun to put your voice out there and to share with your friends and your extended community what's up for you. So I'm happy to be here today, and I see my sister's watching. Gosh, who knows what she's going to make of this. I hope you're digging it. But yeah, if anyone's interested or whatever, you just hit me up, and I'll get back to working on my pitch deck and figuring out how to raise some funds and working on catalyzing this summit. So I do have a kind of first version 1 2.0 Google form if anyone wants to just show early interest. It's not really a commitment or anything. It's just so I can start creating a narrative and painting a picture. You know, if 100 people were to say, yeah, I would be interested potentially in presenting, and I'd also be interested in contributing to the process of co-creation and these innovations. You know, the more that I can paint the picture, the more intention I can get that people would like to contribute in some way. I mean, you can also contribute on the back end, producing a summit, or skills in marketing and PR, and the whole gamut of what it would take to put on an event in person, produce a TV show, and a summit online. No small task. But we're not going to overdo it. We're not going to make it so it's so big and ambitious and perfect that it can't be done. Right now, I'm still in the ideation phase, and I'm sure it will narrow a bit, and I'll find some people to help me really stay focused on getting crystal clear. Even if it is sophisticated and complex, it doesn't mean it can't be understood and intuitive and fun. So definitely not going to sacrifice the essence and sophistication of what I want to accomplish for the sake of simplicity. At the same time, of course, you know, simplicity on the other side of complexity is definitely welcomed. So I'll check in again next time. Again, I guess I'll put in this video link. There's a Telegram group I created just in case people want to ideate with me. There is the form to show early interest. I'll put that link in there. I'll put a link into a couple other things just so people can stay tuned and see what I'm up to. And of course, if anybody wants to make a tax-deductible donation from the US, you're more than welcome. I'll put a link to that. And I'm also looking to some of my friends in the UK and Europe to help me be fiscally sponsored in those countries. So there's multiple ways and places that people can, you know, give a tax-deductible donation and try to make it easier for people. So I love all of you. Thanks for listening. For those who might have been tuning in, it's a sign of support, obviously, to tune in and to share some space with me and listen. So thank you very much. And I will put the links in the next few minutes, I suppose, in this thread. So lots of love. Thanks.